Welcome to the show, Chris Camozzi. Born in California to musical parents, by the age of 7, you were playing guitar, singing, and performing at local events. At the age of 10, you were lead guitarist and vocalist in your own band, appearing on television, radio, and at theme parks from Marine World to Knott's Berry Farm. You've also played bass, synthesizer, drums, as well as secondary instruments. You're also a recording artist in your own right, in addition to session musician for radio and TV commercials for Taco Bell, Levi's, among others. There's loads more to talk with you about, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. And please tell us more.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. Skyler knows it's exciting after all these years that people are still interested in what we do and what we've done. But when I think about it,
For sure.
without veterans like us, the present day music scene wouldn't be the same. We really shaped a lot of things, how records were made, how it's so different. So in my older years now, I'm thinking, I have no value, but I've really changed that whole attitude, and I realize I have so much to teach the next generation.
That's right.
Some of the kids don't even know about 2-inch analog tape. They don't know about punching in and erasing things and having to do everything on the fly and mixing with 5 guys at the console. And it's an amazing thing because it's a great time to be in the music business. I have 1 foot in old school and 1 foot in the new technology. But and what's happened for me is I kind of retired from touring and going on the road, and started a production company and music school for young kids. And that's to teach them, based off of everything that I learned from the past, how to apply that into the new world of digital technology and auto-tune and all that. So I guess you could say that all my experience is kind of finding another way to share that with the next generation. So very excited about that.
Oh, wow.
But my past is crazy. As Skyler knows, we're all part of Narda Michael Walden's team. I'm another piece of that puzzle. And let me explain how I arrived at Narda's camp. It's very clearly there was one person that is responsible for introducing me to everyone and really helping me begin my career, and that was Walter Afanasieff, Walter
Yeah.
A. Now, Walter and I grew up together, went to the same high school. We were in the same high school band together and did everything together. We were super close friends, as you all are when you're in a band, especially in high school. And when we graduated from high school, we continued to play together in college. And then we continued to play together after that in club bands. And, we toured around, did the Holiday Inn circuit and all that. We were just kind of inseparable. He was probably the first truly amazing musician that I'd met in my life. I knew the minute I heard him play piano. I was so taken by that, and I've been very fortunate to have him in my life in those early years. And so Walter, because of his reputation of being such a fine musician, eventually got the attention of Narda and became part of Narda's production team. And they were all working at the Automat in San Francisco. And then I think one of the tasks that Narda may have asked Walter is to demo some songs before they actually cut them in the studio. So Walter called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come up to the Automat and help me do some demos or something?" And, of course there was no money, but it didn't matter. I was like, "Oh my God, thank you. Yes, of course I will." So I went up to the Automat, and there was no room left for us to have a studio. So we literally took a coat closet, and all the coats were in there hanging on this thing, and we rolled it out into the hallway, and we put a little desk in there, and Walter had his Atari 5050 8-track reel-to-reel. I had an Oberheim DX drum machine and a Rockman, and he had a DX7, and that's it. That's all we had. And we would go into this closet and demo these songs that either Walter had written or Narda and Walter or other writers had written. We would do these little demos, put them on a cassette tape, and then send them down to Narda, who was working in the main room with all the famous people. I was just up in the closet. And, it's a really good lesson to teach my students now and explain to them that it's never about the money in the beginning. Don't let that be your prerogative. It's people, it's relationships. And you've got to pay your dues and you've got to volunteer. And I did that for years without making a dime,
Yeah.
nothing. And so how things changed for me is one day Walter and I are in the closet, they're demoing a song, and there's a knock at the door, and I open it, and it's Dave Frazier. That's Narda's first engineer. Yeah. And Dave says, the boss wants to see you. And I think I said, you mean Walter? And he goes, no, you. Like, no one even knew my name. I was just in a closet doing demo. And I'm like, what does he want? He goes, he wants you to do that solo on that demo you did. Exactly the same thing. He wants that same tone and everything. And I'm like, all I owned was a Les Paul and a Rockman. That's all I had to my name, literally. I'm like, okay. So I unplugged him and went downstairs, and I was shaking like a leaf. I walked into the studio, the big main studio, and I'd never met Narda in person. And he was there with these beautiful robes on and the flowers and the incense burning. And I walk in, and I'm like, oh my God, man, I am so out of my element. This guy he's like world class, and I'm just a nobody. So he didn't even say my name because he didn't know my name. He goes, all right, I want you to do that solo you did on that demo. Same thing, just play the same thing, right? And so I go to Dave, I said, can you play the song for me a little bit? I haven't heard it in months, right? So they played it, and I'm like, oh man, that's in another key. That's because the solo was really hard. Remember, it was in another key. And then Narda, I remember listening, he goes, is that a problem for you? You know, and I'm like, no. And then I looked at my guitar neck, and I didn't recognize any notes anymore. I was so frightened. I was scared to death, right? And so Dave goes, okay, let's roll it. And they hit play, right? Record. And here comes the solo. And I remember just thinking in my mind, I don't have any idea what to play. And I played the best solo I think I've ever played in my life in one take, with this overtone harmonic and this huge ending and this wipe at the end, and then stopped, and Dave Frazier put stop. And Narda looks up, he goes, everybody out of the room except for you. And he points to me. I'm like, oh no. He's going to yell. Yeah. He's going to yell at me, right? So he goes, no, everybody out. So everybody gets up. Walter left, and whoever else was in there, Dave Frazier, the other guys, they left the room, and I'm sitting there like hanging my head. And Narda turns around to his chair, and he goes, what's your name? And I said, my name is Chris Camozzi. And the next question he asked I thought was really unique. He goes, tell me about your parents. And I said, well, my dad's a big band singer. My mom was an organist and a vocalist. He goes, where do you live? And I said, I live in Foster City, you know, near Walter. We grew up together. He goes, that was just fantastic what you just did, our first take, you know. He said, can you do that again? I'm like, yeah, I think so. And he goes, okay, well, I'm doing another record for a guy named George Benson. Do you want to play on that? And I'm like, sure. And he goes, okay. He says, oh, before we go, everybody's got to have a nickname, right? Here it comes, Skyler. You got to have a nickname. Yeah. Chris Camozzi. Let's see. Camozzi, Kamikaze. That's your nickname. You are now Kamikaze from this day on. And then everybody came back in the room, and I played on While the City Sleeps. That's the name of George Benson's record. So I got on from a nobody. I got on 2 songs in one day, my first day in the studio. And I have Walter to thank for all of that.
That's right. Yeah.
That was it. He was the guy that opened the doors for me, and I will be forever grateful to him. Yeah. And it was really he was, you know, such a close friend. So it was really an incredible experience. And then from that point on, I became one of the guitar players. There was another guy, Corrado Restucci, who was really the first guy, first call. And Corrado was awesome, way better than me, no question. And he did that for a few more years, but eventually he kind of ended up going back to Italy and becoming a producer. Yeah. And that created a little bit more room for me. And so I played on a few more projects and slowly just, you know, worked my way up the ladder one step at a time. And that's my Narda story.
That's beautiful. And listen, Ryan, you got a question?
I just wanted to get a little background on how you and my dad, you know, ended up meeting, or anything you've worked on in particular that you can, you know, any good stories basically is what I'm looking for.
Oh gosh. Well, we've got a bunch of crazy stories. So
the juicier, the better.
He was already a part of the team long before me. He was in the scene, and he was also an extremely well-known singer in the area. And he was working for Narda doing backgrounds and things like that. And so I didn't really associate with a lot of the other players until when Walter left and started his own production company. And then I was a part of that, and Skyler was also a part of that. And that's when I started meeting and I think more interacting with the other players, because I was still a little bit separate, even though I was still doing a lot of the demo work.
Yeah.
But that's how Skyler and I became friends. And we knew each other a long time before we actually started writing music together, because the way it was explained to me, because it was always, hey kid, this is the way the business works. Guitar players don't write songs. This is a keyboard world. You got to be a keyboard player. That's where all the great songs are. So I was writing songs, and since I didn't play keyboards, I was doing all the demos there was mainly guitar type stuff. And then Skyler called me or something. He was looking for a song for a project or whatever. And I said, I've got these songs, but I'm not sure if they're any good. And I sent him something. He's like, this is great. This stuff is really great. And I said, you think so? He said, oh yeah, man. So we started pretty much like a songwriting team, because I didn't write lyrics. Skyler can create them on the fly. And I had studio and I had production and all that stuff. And so I started doing the music, and I'd give it to Skyler, and he would create these incredible lyrics, and then he would sing all the demos too, because I was a singer, but not like Skyler.
In your closet.
In the closet, right at the first little condo, yeah. You go in the closet, sing the tunes. We just got on so well. It was very, very easy with him, and because he respected what I did what he didn't do, and he did everything I didn't do. So we kind of made a team.
Yeah.
So then we decided, hey, we're kind of a good team together. We should form a thing. I think it was Skyler's idea. Let's form an act or So we came up with this thing, X2 times 2. Remember that, Skyler?
Yeah, there was some bad tunes.
And that was going to be we were going to be like this act, and at that time, there were a lot of these duos. We had a cool guy who was singing and a guy playing keyboards or guitar and writing. And we took publicity pictures and put this package together. We had these really cool songs. And we ran our flag up the pole, and nobody saluted. We were astounded. Nobody really, I don't know, nobody didn't love it. They didn't love it like we did, which, we learn now happens.
And now people are trying to do the song now. That's beautiful.
Right? Yeah. So we have a wonderful library, a catalog of songs that we've written, just the two of us together. And then we brought each other on in different projects and just continued for our relationship and our friendship to grow and write music together.
I'm curious, when you said that, guitar players don't write the songs, it's the keyboardist. What do you what does that mean exactly? How did that
in
work?
that particular era, all the music was really dominated by keyboards. Guitars were just kind of added on top. So usually the writers, like the David Fosters, Walters, and they were all like great keyboard player arrangers. And that was really that era, the 80s, late 80s and 90s, where keyboard players just dominated all the way to the point of...
From an arrangement perspective.
Yeah. You can see all the instruments, and they usually had a much better grasp on theory. And, guitar players, we were just kind of, And then
shredding.
When I went, which is funny, because when I went to work for Michael Bolton, I just started as a guitar player, but I eventually became the music director. But I remember when the first music director left, we didn't know who was going to be the next guy. And I remember them telling me, well, it's not going to be you, because guitar players are not music directors. And I'm like, wow,
that's cold-blooded.
Guitar players are not the songwriters. Guitar players are not the music director. What are we, right? Mm-hmm. But I ended up getting that opportunity to be the music director. It was one of the greatest jobs I ever had. It was so much fun. But that's funny. So that's what I mean. And that's kind of changed, because what happened back in that era, like acoustic guitar, nobody was singer-songwriter. That wasn't happening. It was all solo artists: Whitney Houston, Celine Dion, Michael Bolton, Barbra Streisand, Luther Vandross. It was all solo artists with studio musicians behind it. Yeah. And then slowly what happened, this acoustic guitar thing started taking over slowly, and people started going for more of an organic sound. And I think that's when guitar players, their role really started changing. And I think now, when you listen to a lot of contemporary stuff, it's the cool, vintagey, old sounding guitar thing happening, all right. And the keyboards are just kind of underneath all that, kind of shifted a little bit,
Oh, take that.
Yeah, right. It took a long time, but it's a really exciting time to be making records and producing, because it's being the guitar player. That's the main thing. That's what all these kids want. They want that acoustic guitar thing, real raw behind them and stuff. So
just looking behind you, as you've just mentioned, all the kind of kit you got there, you're clearly an accomplished musician in varying varying guises. Not only, we've mentioned already you worked with Michael Bolton. We haven't mentioned yet the fact you were lead guitarist for Mariah Carey. You were on Saturday Night Live. You did the Tonight Show. You've worked with Barbara Streisand, Whitney Houston, so many other names. Has it just been a lot of, right place, right time for those kind of things, or how did all those kind of things happen for you?
It was all Walter.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell anybody who watches this podcast, if I could gift anything to the next generation, it's that choose your friends wisely. Choose who you associate with, because it's going to be a friend that cares about you, that's going to be the one that refers you for the gig. That's how it works.
Yep.
And it's about networking and people to establish that. Walter helped me get started. He opened those doors for everything. And then kind of after that, I was on my own a little bit. And so it came down to my relationships that I developed with people who eventually referred me for other things and sustained my career. So when Walter was producing those sessions, he kindly asked if I wanted to play guitar on the Michael Bolton thing. And Mariah. Those sessions kind of started with Narda. We started Mariah at Narda Studio. But then when Walter shifted over to the plant, I think it was still the record plant in Sausalito at that point. Oh, what happened is the record was already done. They had pressed like 500,000 copies. It was Mariah's first record. And then Walter and Mariah wrote another song. I'm trying to think which one it was. Was it I Don't Want to Cry, Skyler? Which one is one of these? Yeah, maybe it was I Don't Want to Cry. Anyway, but they wrote this song, and Tommy Mottola heard it. He goes, oh my God, that song has to be on the record. So they recalled all those CDs. However, I think it was 500,000. I think which is a highly unusual amount on first pressing. But they knew she was going to be big. They recalled them all, and Walter produced that track, and I played, I play a lot of classical guitar, nylon string guitar on that track, and we cut that, and I believe that was all done at the record plant, and then they striped that onto the record, and then the record went out. And then, of course, so when I was on tour with Michael Bolton, and I had 2 more shows left on that tour, and Walter called me. I was in Los Angeles at the Marriott Hotel. I remember that, then in Long Beach. He's like, hey, man, what are you doing? I'm like, I got a couple more gigs. He goes, I need you right away to come back because we've got to do these TV shows with Mariah. I'm putting a band together. So I need you. I said, well, when does it start? He said, it starts in 4 days. And I said, I'll be home in 3 days. I couldn't believe the timing. It was
perfect.
So lucky because I knew when the Bolton tour was over, I was like, gosh, now what do I do, right?
Yeah.
I think at that moment, I realized, I think I'm going to be okay. I wasn't thinking, hey, man, I'm so hot. I'm the greatest ever. I was just thinking, oh, my God, I think I'm going to be okay. So I came back, and again, Walter was MD, and we had an incredible band. Randy Jackson was playing bass, and it was such a great band. So we rehearsed in San Francisco, and then we went to New York and did what I think would be considered her first debut gig with a band. Yeah. She had done Richard T. gigs with the 3 background singers. I think they had done other performances, but it was at a club called Tattoo. And Richard T. played piano, keyboards. It wasn't a band. Randy was on bass. It was the most incredible band. And we did this show, and Mariah came out, and she sang like 4 or 5 songs. And it was the merger when Sony bought Columbia. That was the party. And so we did that show, and that was the beginning of Mariah's career. And then we did a bunch of other TV shows, Saturday Night Live, and all these, Arsenio Hall, and all the stuff that was happening back then. And then, her career just absolutely exploded. So, and I was so lucky to be one of the original guys.
That's amazing.
Again, thanks to Walter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to come home, man, so we can write a social conscious. That's what we do, as a social conscious tip.
Yes.
And when we do our festival, I'd love for you to come and play, right?
Yeah, right?
Yes, definitely.
Get everybody.
Man, I want to get your endorsement for Music for Global Change because we're going to be writing tunes, the lyrical content that heals, educates, and solve problem stuff. Chris, I love you, brother. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show, man.
Oh, I love you. We're like family, Skyler. We go so far back.
Hey, man, blessings, brother. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on. Music can save the world. Music can save the world. If we all get together, music can save the world. Yeah.
save the world. Music can save the world. If we all come together, music can save the world. There's an urgency facing our humanity.
Thank you so much for watching. To stay up to date, please click subscribe and hit the bell. You can also join our group on Facebook and find us on LinkedIn and Instagram.